Hello lovelies and welcome to my channel. Today I thought I would do a VR to the lovely Kelly Bear. She has got her very first tag that she's ever made herself out, so of course I've got to play along. So there are 7 prompts all inspired by winter clothing. I think it's a brilliant tag. So here we go. Prompt number 1 is base layers or thermals. Which decks are foundational in your tarot practice and why? So for this I went with my first ever deck, which was the Wild Unknown. So of course this is foundational because this is the deck that started it all off. I'd seen this deck from a friend. She showed it me on FaceTime. I was blown away by it. I really wanted it. I couldn't believe I was buying myself a tarot. I had no idea that this deck was well known. I had no idea that there was a big choice of decks. I had no idea that there were different systems. I'd never even heard the words Rider-Waite-Smith at this point when this deck came into my life. I hadn't discovered TarotTube. I had a channel, but it was for gardening videos. This was the start of it all. This sent me down the tarot rabbit hole and opened up a love for reading tarot. I was going to say then symbolism within art, but I've always been in that world. I think that's why for me tarot just feels like I've always been doing it, because I've been doing symbolism in art and line forever. And I've said before that this deck reminds me an awful lot of the way I use things like line and colour in my own artwork to depict meanings. But this was foundational for swapping me away from visual art and using it within a practice of divination. And I love it. This deck, this was the one that opened all the rabbit holes up and pushed me in, and I love it. I would then say that having fallen down those rabbit holes, very quickly I had to decide on what system I wanted to study first. So foundational for me is the Rider-Waite deck, because this is the system that I've studied. This is the system where the pictures are in my head. Don't have many Rider-Waite decks, but if I was going to pick any deck to work with, I would say it's this yellow box. It's the one with these backs, the plaid backs. This, out of all the Rider-Waite decks for me, was the deck. It transformed the Rider-Waite imagery from just study imagery, but hey, I don't really want to read with that deck, to oh wow, the Rider-Waite is fantastic to actually work with and read. I know that's very much stating the obvious, but for me it wasn't obvious. And once I got this version of Rider-Waite and started working with it, it put this deck into my workable decks, and I think that has brought my tarot practice on in leaps and bounds, to be honest. It's really helped in my study. I mean, I love this Lover's card in this deck. I just love all the colours of it. So for me, this yellow box Rider-Waite was really important. I'm also going to include as a thermal the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight by Christina Benintende. Now this, I claim and stand by, was my first soul deck. It was the first deck where I just couldn't put it down, and I was constantly working with it and just really fell totally hook, line and sinker in love with it. I think it's the colours. I think it's the fact that it goes its own way a little bit. It's the artwork. Everything in it just speaks to my soul visually. This death card broke me into 1,000 pieces and rebuilt me as somebody different. I think that's my all-time favourite tarot card ever. Love that card. Just everything in this deck spoke to where I was at the time, what I love and still love visually. It taught me that tarot can really get into your heart and build a home there that is going nowhere. I really love this deck. This was foundational, I think, for turning my study into a lifelong love affair. So that's Tarot of the Sweet Twilight, and I can't move away from the base layers and the thermals until I talk about the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. So this was a deck that I worked with initially ever such a lot. This is the pocket size version. I actually work more with the full size version and the guidebook, and this was the deck that taught me to not be afraid to go my own way, because this is a deck that goes its own way too. It taught me that I like the rebels and the outliers within the tarot and oracle world. I like the decks that do something different, that go somewhere new, that throw mysticism and a dream landscape into the mix. This deck taught me a lot, not only about what I like in tarot, but how I read tarot. The fact that I will listen to a tree and put that message into the tarot reading. I will grab a doll and listen to the tiny soul whisper of the doll and put that into the reading without worrying about whether it's the right or the wrong way to do things. This deck taught me to be a bit more rebellious and true to myself within my tarot practice. It opened a lot of doors and I love it. I also think it connects my subconscious with my conscious life as well. It is a tunnel between the two, and for that I love it. So I couldn't move away from base layers without talking about the Dreams of Gaia. So prompt number 2 is the Ugly Christmas Sweater, a novelty deck that brings you joy. Well, I don't know as I would class them as novelty decks, but it's quite funny. The decks that immediately sprung to mind is the decks that have been desperately calling to live in the doll room. So I have a few decks for that. The first one I want to share is this Witchling Academy Tarot. It's by Pamela Chen and it's illustrated by Mindy Zhang. It isn't a Harry Potter deck, but it feels like a girls' school Harry Potter deck. It has this sort of handbook, Witchling Academy handbook, as the guidebook, these backs, and its style is very anime. It's very storybook, anime, sort of cartoon book feeling, and I think it's a combination of the art style, the storytelling aspect of it, all the coloured hair I love, the fact that it links me to Hogwarts. I can't pick up this deck and use it without being transported in part of my mind to Hogwarts, which is a world that I've grown up with and adored, and my kids have adored. So this just brings me joy to look at it. I love it. Again, it's another deck that I want to work with more in 2023, but look at it. It's very feminine. All of the kings and the queens are all feminine, and the students are girls as well, so it's a very feminine deck, but I love it. Look, here's a king, so you can see it's very feminine, but I just love the art style. It's a transportative deck if you love story, which I think a lot of us tarot readers do. So another ugly Christmas sweater deck, which isn't ugly at all. In fact, both of these decks are by Samantha West. The last two decks in this category I want to share. The Rainbow Moon Tarot, which is living in the doll room while I wear all of my ugly Christmas sweaters to do Christmas readings with. And also by Samantha West, I bought her other deck, which has got a very rude word on, so if you don't like very rude words, then look away now. But I bought this one. I can't believe I did, because when I first saw this deck, my lacy Victorian collar fluttered in the wind at the rude word on it. Oh my goodness me. However, I had a complete change of heart on this. I went through a month where some pretty horrible things happened, to be honest, and some people came at me with some pretty nasty words themselves, and it made me harden up a bit and to think, I'm not that soft, I'm not really offended by that word, it doesn't bother me. So I bought this deck out of defiance, to be honest. I put my ugly Christmas sweater on out of defiance, and I'm glad I did because I love it. But first I'm going to show you the Rainbow Moon Tarot. Why is it in this category? Because it makes me smile. The colours kind of are just out of this world, literally. I mean, look at the colours in this box. I'm using this every day in December as part of daily tarot readings over on my Tiny Soul Whisper channel, and it is just wonderful. Its colours shouldn't mix. I mean, green and yellow and pink and turquoise and lime green, it shouldn't go, but it just does, and I've been getting some really lovely readings with this. Is it a novelty deck? Probably not, but it is very like moon, cosmic. You've got these strange creatures, you've got elf ears, you've got wings, you've got sparkly blue hair, you've got great body diversity throughout, you've got skin colour as well, you've got these incredible fashions, there's mermaids, there's all sorts of amazingness going on within this deck, and I love it. It makes me smile. It's the closest to a novelty deck I can get, only because the colours are such a novelty to see together, and I love it. I think Samantha West's decks are really wonderful. I think I am a real fan of them, or becoming a real fan, shall we say. And this one is going to call it the Cosmic Tarot, because although I was bold and brave and brought the deck, I still can't bring myself to say the word. But look at the edging. Samantha's colour choice is amazing. Now, I haven't used this yet, but oh boy, I'm going to keep it out. Look at this. If this doesn't make you smile, then there's something wrong with your smileability, because this is fantastic. Oh yeah, and it was a real act of rebellion for me buying this deck. I thought, well, I'm just not offended by it. I'm not bothered by the word, and I need to stop being so easily led into offence, really, because I'm not offended by the word, and I think it's funny, and I think the deck is brilliant. I think it's very well executed. I love the backs. So you've got discs in here, you've got probes instead of wands. You've got ray guns, I think those are instead of swords, and you've got specimens instead of cups. Absolutely fabulous. Samantha West, she is the queen of the ugly jumper for me. I just think she is brilliant. Okay, prompt number 3 is your winter coat, your workhorse deck, or your most used deck. Well, this year, and of course this will be changeable, it has got to be the Arthurian Tarot alongside the Mists of Avalon Oracle. These are two that I've shared throughout the year because I've been doing the Hallow Quest. Of course, this is back in print again now, having gone out of print last year. Just when I wanted to start sharing it, it went out of print and I felt like I couldn't share it anymore. But it's back. It's either back or it's back in January, I think. It's on pre-order if it's not already back. But this is wonderful. The Hallow Quest that goes with it is really impacting. I'm picking the Hallow Quest up again in 23 and this month actually. I love it. It is just a wonderful, in my heart deck. So that's the Arthurian Tarot, which kind of goes as a single deck for me in my head with this Miss of Avalon Oracle by Rose in Sarah. I also love this. Celtic Britain is where I grew up, where I was raised. I come from Welsh border country, spending summers in Ireland. This feels like home to me. It really does. And when I look in these cards, I see the countryside where I grew up and the myths that I grew up with and the stories of Arthur, and this was all stuff that I grew up with and I'm fascinated by. Hopefully in 23 I'm going to start studying some other Celtic decks as well. I've got the Druid Craft Waiting, which I've never worked with yet. I've also got the Wildwood Waiting, which I haven't worked with yet. But this year, those two were my most used deck. So prompt number 4 is Snow Boots, a deep dive deck that you can really sink into. What makes it so interesting? Well, I thought straight away about the Thoth, but I think the Thoth in that category is a given for most of us. So I went with this one because this is a deck, again, that I really want to focus on next year. Now, this is the Mysteries of the Black Madonna Tarot deck. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot in the deck. I just think there's an awful lot to fall into with this deck. The book is very in-depth as well. I think it's one that I'm going to have to sit with over time and really work with the book. I think I might do with this deck what I did initially with the Dreams of Gaia, just pull a card a day and then one weekly reading a week with it until all the cards have been read and studied about. Also, I think the stories around some of the statues and the Black Madonnas and the different Madonnas around the world, you can just fall into that. It makes you want to get on a plane and go visit churches. So I think a study of the Marys, not only Mother Mary but Mary Magdalene, is really pulling at me. There is a very, very large rabbit hole opening up under this deck. Also making dioramas and box art. I always used to make box art years ago when I was at college. Joseph Cornell as well is one of my favourite artists. He made box art as well. So visually as well, this is a very deep rabbit hole for me to fall into. It's something I really want to start working on in my art studio as well, and I've actually been collecting things to start this. So there are rabbit holes literally opening up all around this deck. It's very beautiful. It's definitely calling to me. So it's definitely my Snow Boots, and I think I'm going to be falling into the deepest snowdrift soon with this one. Right, category number 5 is Hat, a deck that twists your noggin or that you struggle to connect with and understand. Well, for me, really, it could be any Marseille deck. I have the Spanish Tarot, which I just don't have a clue, and I know Kelly Bow, this VR is too. She's fantastic with Marseille, and she is a Marseille reader, and I'm sorry, Kelly Bow, but I just don't understand it. Rightly so though, because I've given it no time and no study and no effort, so of course I don't understand it. Another hat, this is a rather sparkly hat, the Mythical Creatures Tarot. Again, it's Marseille. Beautiful subscriber sent me this. They hadn't connected with it as much as they'd wanted to, and they sent it to me, and look at this artwork. Oh my gosh, it is absolutely mind-blowing. So I connect with the artwork. I'm just not very good at reading with it. Does that mean I'm giving up on Marseille? Absolutely not. It is a system that I do want to learn. I am fascinated by it, but I haven't got round to it yet. So these decks will definitely come into play when I make the time to study for Marseille. So that's another rather sparkly hat. But the most confusing hat of all, because I don't even know whether it's Marseille or not. I'm so confused by it. the Wisdom Seekers Tarot, and I bought this very early on in my tarot practice. In fact, I tried to do just a flip through, not realising it was different, and I got so confused in the video, and I'm still confused, and it's still not had any time. The guidebook really lays everything out as numerology. The numbers are really important. So I've flipped through that, but I've not given it any time yet. In fact, I very nearly got rid of it, but I do love this illustrated pip style, and I do love the colours that this deck uses. I don't get it. It doesn't look like Marseille, but it doesn't look like Ride Away either, and it doesn't look like Thoth either. I don't get what this is, and I think the suits have been swapped around. I think wands is air and swords of fire. I think you can see I'm still confused. I should really do a deep dive just to see, just to prove to myself I can learn something that's really confused me. I can make the hat fit eventually. But out of all of my decks, I mean, I've got a soft spot for it because of this. The Wisdom Seekers Tarot, it twists my noggin. Category number 6 is Scarf, a hug deck for when you are in need of comfort and support. The Gentle Tarot. I know that this isn't a hug deck for everybody, but for me, it really acted like a hug deck for me. For a start, the colours I think feel like a warm hug. But the messages I got from this when I was at my lowest, really, I've come to this deck. Never pushed me too hard. Always gave me a comfort viewpoint to look at things with. A way to reframe an impossible situation. A way to glean the silver lining, or to mine the gold out of something not so good. And it made me feel safe, this deck. This deck makes me feel safe. These colours as well make me feel safe. I suppose they remind me a little bit of the Sweet Twilight deck colours as well that I shared earlier. There's something about this musty palette that looks like it's been painted through kind of a foggy filter that I love. It feels like a warm scarf. It feels like a comfort hug, and I love it. The last prompt is Mittens, your travel deck for readings on the go. Well, I have a travel little box that's come with me on Adventure Tarot this year, but not all my travel decks in here. I really want to share 3 travel decks. The first one in my travel altar is the deck that's coming on Adventure Tarot for the Sheila gigs. This is the Dark Goddess Tarot. I forgot what it was called then for a moment. So this has been really fundamental in 2022 for initially inspiring the idea of Adventure Tarot, for getting away from the desk with your tarot cards, inspired by this card. What an important card this turned out to be. On a quest for the Sheilas, that card set us off, and out of the door we went with tarot in hand, which then inspired all sorts of ideas for Adventure Tarot. So the Dark Goddess Tarot is my travel deck number 1. Travel deck number 2, a must deck for my practice. This could have also gone in one of my most used decks, the Stretch Tarot. Boy oh boy, is this deck something. It is, it's one of my all-time favourite decks. I think if I could only have, say, 2 decks, this would be one of them. That's how important this deck is. Don't ask me what the other deck is. I don't ever want to answer that question, because that would just be painful. But I know that this deck would need to be grabbed. And of course this came to Margaret's house with me, and I think if I was going anywhere where there was sort of spirit communication needed, or anywhere haunted, or anything like that, anywhere where there was a sacred site to visit, this would be the deck that I would want in my bag with me for sure. So the Stretch Tarot, definitely an important travel deck. The last deck I want to share, the third travel deck, is the Gilt Tarot. Now, if you saw my video walking through the woods in Wales, you will know that this is the deck that I had in my bag. This is often the deck that I've thrown it in my bag since I got it quite early on in my practice. And I think that this deck is really good out on the go for travelling and readings on the go. It worked fantastically with the Whispers of Nature out in the wild. In fact, it was breathtaking how well it worked, and it established itself really in 2022 as a deck that is capable of, say, coming down onto the beach with me, or going into the woods with me, or going on a hike with me, and working with nature to pull out a message that I need to hear from the experiences that I'm having. So it's definitely an adventure tarot deck. I love it. I think the keywords and the artwork is just amazing. I love the Tree of Life back to it. I love these giant numbers on it. I just love it. I love everything about the Gilt Tarot. So the Gilt Tarot, my third travel deck. That's it, guys, my tarot and oracle at times winter wardrobe as of December 2022. Thank you to Kelly Bear for a fantastic first tag. Do more, because this was fantastic. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye.